Hey guys, hope all is well. So I have not done an interview in a long time. This is the first one where it's like a one-on-one interview. I experimented with that years ago, got away from it, but I am very pleased today to have Eric Canete of Arc Athena. I want to pass it off to him really quickly and let him basically do a brief overview of his career, who he is, Arc Athena, what's going on with it. It's the second campaign. This is Dawn of Monsters. But I cannot do his resume justice. So Eric, thanks again for taking time out of your busy schedule to stop by. I really appreciate it. And yeah, just tell people, for those who don't know about you, a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, let me try to get through the Cliff Notes version of it. First of all, thanks for having me, Doug. Thanks to your audience for listening in. Hello, my name is Eric Canete. I am an artist, illustrator, and designer. I've worked in animation, film, and video games. My career got started, even though I wanted to get my start in comics, I really didn't have the chops to cut it in the mainstream, so I accidentally fell backwards into animation. I worked on shows like, oh gosh, my first show that I ever worked on was Aeon Flux for MTV, and from there I ended up working on just everything from Godzilla to Men in Black to, you know, the He-Man from the early 2000s, and then Teen Titans, the Batman animated series, to Justice League. And the last thing I worked on in the animation field was, I think it was Tron for Disney, the Tron animated series. Comic book wise, I did things like what is it, like Iron Man Enter the Mandarin, and a couple of fill-in issues here and there for Marvel. I did a bunch of covers for DC, Dark Horse, and Marvel. And I worked with Mark Miller on the second Chrononauts installment called Future Shock. And now I'm working on my own creator-owned series, a six-parter called Arc Athena, of which book 2 was launched a couple weeks ago.
Excellent. I have book 1.
Right on.
Excellent. It was a great way to kickstart your series. So great job. Impressed with the whole package. And actually, I'm stealing a little bit. My back cover on my omnibus is going to be similar to this. So I was thinking about covers, and I was looking at yours, and I'm like, I want to do something like Eric.
Yeah.
So I admit right here in front of everybody that I am inspired by a plain cover, and then I want to have like a quote that sort of sums up Soulfinder by a particular priest that I like. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, we all end up borrowing, stealing ideas from each other, right? So it's all fair game, I think.
As long as you're upfront about it and you're not trying to pass it off as like, oh, I just had this great idea out of like nowhere and it's all mine. And no, just own up. You know, if somebody inspires you, just, you know, let people know, like, hey.
Oh, for sure. For sure. We both have a mutual acquaintance named Tim Lim, and I am not shy telling people that I'm running his playbook when it comes to an extended mini series, an ongoing series like this, because he's pretty much established the baseline of what success looks like. So why wouldn't I, under his good graces, take that baton and move almost similarly as he does, knowing full well that he did a lot of front end thinking for me. So I figured, why not?
Yeah, and I don't even know how many books that Tim and Mark have put out so far. It's insane. I think they're averaging like 4 a year or something along those lines. Yeah. So I mean, if Arc Athena is only on 2, you know, we will judge you when we judge you when you're on like your 12th installment or something along those lines.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're rolling along. Like I said, Arc Athena, the first part was excellent, action-packed, and everything was rolling along. And then I'm really looking forward to this one. So I did up some notes today. We don't have
Oh,
to
brilliant.
stick exactly to
You're so
these, but
prepared, Doug. It's awesome.
I figured I would just kind of go through and we'll see where it goes. I will try to naturally transition to,
Yeah.
just go with the flow of the conversation. So,
Yeah, man.
with Arc Athena, my first question for you is why Arc Athena? So, out of all of the six-part stories for an original IP, why this one? I'm sure you have all sorts of ideas bouncing around your head, but only
Yeah.
you only have so much time. Why is this the one that you're like, this is what I want to put out into the world?
That's a great starting question. I think there's the pragmatic one and then there's the creative one. So I'll start off with the pragmatic one first. I got caught. I tongue in cheekily say that for a while there I got plucked off the planet because as far as mainstream comic books were concerned, because I kind of dropped reading mainstream comics. I just got caught with, I just ended up doing a lot of things for my job, and I wasn't really paying attention to what was out there. And for whatever reason, I came back into it again, thinking that I would be reading the kind of books that I sort of left behind. Right? And the more I read, the more I realized that the type of stories, the type of characterizations, and the type of narratives that were being published weren't for me. So I spent a good portion of the time just kind of pointing out what was wrong, or at least the stuff that I didn't align with. And you get enough of that under your belt where you go, it's kind of annoying to hear myself complain a lot. So rather than complain about it, I said, you know what? I think I'm in a pretty unique position in being able to do something about it, right? I kind of had my connections as far as like getting published is concerned. So I just decided enough complaining, enough talking, enough sort of like armchair quarterbacking. Let me go do something about it. So from a more practical, pragmatic sense, that's what led me into the space. As far as the story is concerned, I think that's sort of linked to the practical reason, which is to say, I'm writing the kind of story that I believed the comics that I ended up reading, about a year, 2 years ago. I don't think they were capturing it, which is characterization, right? Characters who are narratives that are building on the foundation of like themes, understanding how those themes are reflected back at the characters that are in the story. And most importantly, I just wanted to say thank you very much to the comic books that led to my sort of creative upbringing, primarily the old school Marvel of the 80s and 90s. So I said, I think I can write that. Let me try it.
Cool. Well,
Yeah.
actually, that was a question I was going to ask later, but since you mentioned old school Marvel,
Yeah.
I was going to ask. So you're 90 years old and it's cold outside,
Yeah.
and somebody, the nurse or your wife or someone gives you a hot tea or a hot chocolate or whatever, and
Yeah.
whatever the equivalent of television in that, in however many decades in the future. They're like, what do you want to watch? What sort of like Marvel cartoon like cartoon do you want to watch? Or like they have all of the Marvel and DC comics all online. You could just bring it up digitally. What is the Marvel comic that you want to read as a 90-year-old man?
Oh my gosh, that is a great question. I have been in recent time revisiting whole runs of Chris Claremont slash whomever it was that he was working with back in the day. Post writing and drawing, as you know, I think I told you this offline. I finished all of as much as 5 issues of the 6 issues of Arc Athena. And so I went back and, in digital form, started rereading Chris Claremont comics just to see whether or not I was capturing in spirit, not necessarily beat for beat, the stuff that I was trying to do with Arc Athena. So I think I could continuously reread those things, right? I don't know. I'm a huge Mobius fan, so I would probably just from the visual end, I'd buy as many Arzak, or is it Azrak? I'm kind of confused about. I think it's Arzak. I'd get as many Mobius comics as I could. I'd get as many Otomo comics that I could, just because it's such a delight looking at them visually, and then when you read them, they really pace themselves out very differently than I would.
Yeah, I was always more like Spider-Man, Iron Man when I was a kid, but
Yeah,
we had
yeah,
X-Men, and those Chris Claremont, they were like a giant steak in terms of you could spend a really long time reading them. They had all like the narration going on,
yeah,
and they were
yeah,
just really densely packed
Yes.
with material,
Yes.
but it wasn't like it was good. It's
Yeah.
not like it was just like there's a couple writers, I would say, and creators that they have densely packed all dialogue and all of this, but it's just not good. But with that particular X-Men run, um, if my memory is correct, it was just like, no, you really were getting your money's worth.
Yeah, if you put it under scrutiny, I think what's different between then and now is that there's a lot more information by way of either narrative, or I don't even know if they do narrative boxes anymore, but like there's so much narrative that goes on, and it presents itself as either clever or nuanced, but it's not very informational, right?
Right.
I think the way Claremont and a particular generation of writers did it was everything that was on the page serves to give you an information about whatever it may be that's giving information about whether it be character or plot, right? So anytime somebody would talk, it would give you insight on how they either are thinking about the current thing that's happening to them, or
Hmm.
helps forward the plot along so that you have a better understanding of either the expectation that you should be set up for, or the thing that they're going to end up breaking by way of expectation later on in the narrative or the miniseries. So that's really an interesting writer approach to how comics were being done back then and how comics are being done now. I think it's generally very sort of like generational.
Yeah, I would say, and if people were like, "Oh, tell me exactly the page in the panel," I can't do it. But from my experience, sort of leapfrogging off of that, I would say it was like the thought balloons or the narration or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
They would actually show a character's vulnerable side. They would
yes.
try and tap into something in that character's soul or their
Mm,
psyche
mm,
that they were shielding from the outside world, or it's
yes.
just something to make you connect with them on an
Yeah,
emotional level. Whereas, like you said, today it's, oh, the writer's like, oh, I want to use this to be snarky and show that how
yeah,
witty I am.
right, right. It's
Which
rare
is
about the character, more about the writer's position. And I think it's I like, most of the time I think it's unfair, but sometimes people have criticized modern day comic book writers to just be using the characters as their like speaker box, or their bullhorn or whatever. And I don't necessarily believe that's always 100% of the time, but I think they managed to do it more elegantly and cleverly back in the day, where they had a fair understanding of where they took the time to build the character's perspective, not in by way of pages, but by way of their reaction. And back then they had the benefit of the inner monologue, which were those thought balloons. I don't know if they do that as often anymore. I think that's sort of not a cool thing to do anymore. I haven't seen modern comics do too many thought balloons, but back in the day, it wasn't, to your point, Doug, it wasn't just about like giving you perspective on how they, like whatever inner monologue that was happening with them, but it gave you an insight as to how they were reacting internally to this new bit of information that got put in front of them. So I think that's pretty neat. That's pretty great.
Yeah, I'm
It's
actually a fan of the thought balloons if they
Me
are
too.
done correctly.
Me
So
too.
bring back the thought balloons. Now, I guess I would say in terms of some of the problems or changes in the industry,
Mm,
before we kind of circle back on Arc Athena,
yeah.
uh, with the question is, can the modern mainstream industry be saved or not? Or do you even, maybe you don't even agree with my premise that it needs saving, that it's in
Yeah.
trouble? I don't
Yeah.
know. So what are your thoughts? And if it is in trouble, can the ship be righted?
That is such a big question. We have to figure out whether or not the modern mainstream industry understands its audience, right? Not its actual audience, not its potential one. As a business, you have to go look for people who could potentially end up you have to find a way to grow your audience, and there is the conceptual one and there's the actual one. For sure, you need to be able to cater with your actual audience, but allow for the opportunity of an infusion of new readers from wherever it is you may find them. So, assuming that let's premise that those problems are real, which is you're not finding the right audience, the best sort of audience retention that you have are pre-existing ones, then you really have to identify what drives those people to keep coming back. And oftentimes, when there is a miss, by way of initiative, by way of events, I point to leadership and go like, "Why are you not understanding that that's what your audience wants?" Right? I know that the creatives, from the writer to the whatever to the artist, often are vilified for whatever thing that they put in front of the audience. But to me, it goes beyond that. The people that I believe need to be held accountable, the people who are supposed to be the standard bearers, are the people in the middle management to the upper management, right? They are the ones that are making the call. Rare do I ever see a writer walk into an office and say, I demand to be writing this X, Y, and more X and W, X, Y book, right? I think if I'm going to focus and point a finger at why are things suboptimal, why are things not resonating, I point to leadership. So you fix that first, you find an identity, you find a direction, and build a plan, an actionable plan on how to head towards that direction, allowing for course correction along the way. And I think that's one way. Again, assuming that things are broken, that I think that's the most broad but one way to get to a level of success. I think right now, the majority of leadership, the majority of mainstream, are going, at least from my limited vantage point, because I only give it so much thought and energy to peak in that direction. Oftentimes, it's leaderless, rudderless, and standardless.
Now, you mentioned leadership on Indiegogo campaigns or crowdfunding campaigns.
Yeah,
You are the leader.
yeah,
And you mentioned having to fix things, having to learn about things.
yeah,
What, being on your second campaign now, and I know you haven't had time to sort of distance yourself, but if you had
yeah.
to, what what is maybe the biggest lesson you've learned so far with one full campaign and now the Volume 2 campaign? I think it's going to be a quick one.
Yeah,
21
yeah.
days left.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
uh, what are you thinking in terms of lessons learned? And okay, going into the third campaign, I
Right,
got to
right.
apply this lesson.
Yeah, I mean, from campaign one, and I'm learning it as I go, which is, and this is right out of our buddy Tim's playbook, which is, you know, set up expectations correctly, right? Like, this is what the audience should be looking at. This is what they can expect from you. And you should either meet it or exceed it, right? And everything from the quality of the book, the time that it takes to get the book into people's hands, and then the expectation of this is an ongoing series, right? So, that expectation then leads into consistency, right? Be as consistent as possible. If this is what you've told to people that you're going to be delivering, then continue to do that again, if not exceeding it. And that's critical. And I know that's very broad, but it's the best way that I can explain it. And then just me personally, the thing that I learned is to detach the metric of success immediately around the dollar figure and focus more on the backer number, because for me that's ultimately the long-term importance of how you make, at least for me, my projects quote unquote sticky, right? Which is, these are the amounts of people who are going to stick around and read whatever project that I'm working on, preferably, Arc Athena action adventure comics themed. And so that for me was a big learning, which is detach any sort of metric of success away from the dollar figure, because if I stay consistent, right, and deliver on a level of quality, I have to have a firm belief that those two pillars are going to lead me to a version of success that has a lot more longevity behind it.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you. And if you even go back in Tim and Mark's, their crowdfunding campaigns,
Yeah,
particularly Black Hops,
yeah,
when that one first came out, there was the peanut gallery that are just
yeah,
little rabbit, all this
yeah,
sort
yeah,
of
yeah.
stuff. And Common America, same thing. I think Black Hops, its first campaign, I don't even know if it broke $20,000
Sure,
or not.
sure.
Maybe it was around like 15,000. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it was one of those things where um, you had the critics saying like this is a stupid idea or whatever, and then you fast forward in time, Black Ops is doing well, Common America is doing well.
Yeah,
Common America 5 is
Yeah.
now $132,721
Yeah.
with
So
3,058
awesome.
backers and
So awesome.
4 days to go. So it's like, no, you have to have the faith in your own talent and your work ethic. And like you said, your ability to be consistent, and then
Hmm.
just, hope and trust that your audience will grow if it is a quality product.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey guys, just want to say thanks for tuning in to my first part of the interview, the Arc Athena interview with Eric Canete. I really appreciate it. I wanted to chop it up into at least 2 parts for you so you can enjoy that over the weekend. So, anyway, thanks again for tuning in. Check out Arc Athena before the campaign closes, and I'll see you later. See ya.